Why is English the globally accepted language? UK colonialism. American culture popularity in movies and business. English has become the language of science and required for airlines worldwide. Even most coding languages are based on English. It eventually just makes sense. Two English-speaking powerhouses have essentially ruled the world for the last few hundred years. Britain was a huge empire and forced English on people. Then other people learned English so that they could talk to people in or formerly in the empire. Pretty much any trade language in history has a similar story. British colonialism Pax Americana. So there was this really big empire, right? And they took over half the world and forced everyone to speak English. Britain ruled most of the world and taught those nations that we own the English language. It was useful to use the language, so these countries adopted it. UK and US. Britain owned like a quarter of the earth at its height, and its colonies remain worldwide politically important today. The USA is the most powerful country in the world, and the Commonwealth is some of the most developed and richest outside of Europe. And for tourist countries, lots of people with disposable incomes and that are rich enough to go on holiday abroad are from the Anglosphere, so people in tourist countries learn the language to understand tourists better. And finally, the USA and UK to a lesser extent have a massive worldwide cultural influence in things like TV and social media, so more people learn the language. The United Kingdom conquered 30% of the world and owned it for about 500 years. The language they used was English. So to facilitate trade, people learned that language. Partly the British Empire and Yale speak the language of the Empress, thank you very much. And partly because America mostly speaks English, and they had all the money, and typically you want to speak the language of the person with the money in your efforts to divest them of some of it. And partly a network effect where if you only speak one language, the best second language to learn is English, because you get all the English natives and all the people who learned English. If you are looking at that second point and thinking thoughts about Chinese and how it might become the global language. Yes, I am really impressed with the lack of comments trying to claim that English is uniquely suited to being a global language with really bad linguistics takes. In short, colonialism. The English, later the British, claimed large chunks of the planet as their own and proceeded to populate these places with their own people and push their language, laws and culture into these areas. The sun never set on the British Empire for like 100 years. Then for the last 70 years the US economy and has been dominant. Because the alternative is French, so obviously people will choose English. Everyone answered already, so I'd like to recommend to look into the history of other lingua franca. It's always very enlightening about the politics of a specific time and place. There's also the current conversation of what will be the next one, though I don't think English will be replaced anytime soon. It's bound to happen eventually. Because we're better than you, and we know it. White Goodman. It is very useful to have a common language for a variety of reasons. For example, say there are 200 languages besides English, you just need a translator that can speak that language and English, and the right two of 200 translators can allow communication between every language, as opposed to having 40,000 translators for every combination of languages. It's also important for industries where everyone really needs to understand each other, like aviation. The common language used to be French in the 1800s, but once Britain conquered a lot of the world, bringing English to those areas, English and French started to compete for the top spot on the early 19th. The nail in the coffin for French was when the US became a global superpower after WW II, not just in military strength, but also economically, and in science and entertainment as well, causing industries to switch to English to fit with the US and everyday people to learn English through their entertainment. Because of the English-speaking tradition of colonialism, there are few places in the world that haven't been taken over by either Britain or America at some time or another. Other than few countries, Russia, North Korea, lol, no. China, Central Asia, South America. Actually, they teach English in North Korea. Start around 36 minutes. https